To ask whether knowledge can exist independently of the communities that nurture it is to confront a subtle but enduring tension. Between information and understanding, between access and immersion, some truths are not merely found in texts or databases, but in rituals, practices, and shared experience. They belong to communities, cultural, religious, professional, where meaning is cultivated collectively. Even when someone from outside that community possesses the same facts, they may lack the interpretive lens that makes that knowledge intelligible, resonant, or actionable. Knowledge is not only discovered, it is learned, performed, and embedded in relationships, history, and shared values. This video traces how knowledge, when situated in a community, both empowers and limits, creating depth for insiders and opacity for outsiders. It asks, what does it mean to truly know? And how does belonging shape the very possibility of understanding? In many societies, knowledge is inseparable from the practices that sustain it, woven into the very fabric of communal life. Religious traditions, for example, are not merely repositories of doctrine. They are living ecosystems of belief, memory, and ritual. Teachings are preserved not only in texts, but in the cadence of prayer, the rhythm of hymns, the gestures of ceremonial enactment, and the shared understanding that arises through generations of interpretation. A sacred text, no matter how widely circulated, reveals its profound truths only to those who immerse themselves in the lived experience of the community, who breathe the air of devotion, witness the rituals unfold, and engage in dialogue that brings the words to life. The text alone is a skeleton. The community's practice is the flesh and soul that animates it. Similarly, cultural knowledge, from oral storytelling to folk wisdom, from craft traditions to seasonal rites, is not merely a catalog of facts, but a mode of being. A proverb is more than words. It carries the weight of ancestral insight, the echo of shared struggle and triumph, the subtle inflections of local speech, the pauses and gestures that give it texture and resonance. A ritual is more than performance. It is an embodiment of values, a mapping of relationships, a rehearsal of memory and identity. Communities act as custodians of this knowledge, translating abstract ideas into lived meaning, shaping the lens through which members perceive the world, and offering guidance in navigating its complexities. To step outside such a community is not simply to lack information, it is to encounter knowledge in a form that is fragmented, hollow, and distant. One may read the words, memorize the procedures, or watch the actions, yet without the immersive rhythm of shared life, the subtleties of timing, intention, and relational resonance remain inaccessible. Knowledge, in its deepest sense, is not a solitary possession. It is an experience, a conversation with the past and present, a thread in the living tapestry of communal existence. To truly understand it requires participation, attunement, and the slow accretion of insight that only arises from belonging. Philosophers and sociologists have long recognized that knowledge is not an isolated possession but a living network, distributed through communities of practice. Within these epistemic communities, authority does not reside in a single mind or a solitary genius. It emerges collectively, shaped by dialogue, shared experience, and the tacit understanding cultivated over years of engagement. A practitioner, whether in medicine, law, theology, or craft, is validated not merely by individual insight, but through immersion in the rhythms, protocols, and evaluative practices of their peers. Knowledge is inseparable from the social web that sustains it, a dynamic interplay between teaching, observation, and collaborative judgment. Trust becomes the invisible thread that binds knowledge to its social context. When a novice learns from a master, they receive more than information. They inherit a way of seeing, a mode of discernment, and an ethical compass that guides how the knowledge is applied. Each lesson carries implicit rules, unspoken priorities, and the weight of communal experience. The community grants both access and legitimacy, ensuring that knowledge is recognized as reliable, meaningful, and capable of action. It is in this crucible of shared practice that abstract facts are transformed into living wisdom. To approach the same knowledge from outside the community is to confront it in a fragmented, opaque form. Without the relational scaffolding that validates, interprets, and contextualizes it, even the most precise information can appear ambiguous, hollow, or incomprehensible. Authority is not a static property, but a relational phenomenon. Understanding depends as much on belonging, trust, and participation as it does on cognition. Knowledge, in essence, is never merely what is known, but how it is lived, shared, and sanctioned within the communities that guard and nurture it. In our era of unprecedented information availability, it is easy to conflate access with understanding. Digital texts, videos, open-source repositories, and endless streams of online content create the seductive illusion that one can know anything from anywhere, instantly. Yet communities remind us that knowledge is never merely a matter of retrieval. It is lived, breathed, and enacted. Knowledge is not a set of inert statements or formulas. It is a social, interpretive practice, inseparable from the networks of people, histories, and contexts that sustain it. A person outside a community may encounter the same words, rituals, or procedures, but without immersion, nuance, and shared experience, comprehension remains necessarily partial. Knowledge carries layers that cannot be downloaded or skimmed, the tacit rules that guide behavior. The intuitive judgments honed over years, the values and sensibilities embedded in culture, these dimensions are not encoded in text alone. They are absorbed through participation, observation, dialogue, and the quiet rhythms of practice that bind people together. Thus, to truly know is not merely to have access, but to belong, to inhabit a living network of relationships, norms, and shared practices that shape not only what one understands, but how one perceives, interprets, and engages with the world. Knowledge in this sense is inseparable from the communities that nurture it. It is social, dynamic, and profoundly human. Communities do far more than simply transmit information. They shape the very contours of identity itself. To know is inseparable from who one is, how one perceives the world, and how one engages with others. Religious, cultural, and professional communities provide frameworks that orient their members not only toward facts, but toward ways of being, modes of judgment, and ethical horizons. They cultivate a shared lens through which reality is interpreted and meaning is made. In this sense, knowledge is profoundly performative. To truly understand a community's knowledge is to act within it, to speak and decide in harmony with its norms, and to participate in its ongoing living creation of meaning. Outsiders may glimpse the surface, read the words, observe the ceremonies, but without immersion, their engagement remains inevitably partial, like perceiving a three-dimensional form only through its shadow. Understanding, in this view, is inseparable from enactment. Belonging does not compromise objectivity. Rather, it deepens insight. It situates knowledge within context, anchoring abstract concepts in the shared rhythms of life, collective memory, and attentive practice. In these spaces, knowledge becomes tangible, ethical, and resonant, a force that shapes perception, action, and the sense of what it means to inhabit the world. The inherently social nature of knowledge brings with it profound ethical questions. When knowledge resides within a community, sharing it indiscriminately carries real risks: distortion, oversimplification, or the erosion of subtlety and nuance. Communities serve as careful stewards of this wisdom, guiding its transmission, interpreting its meaning, and adapting it to changing circumstances while preserving its integrity. To step into these spaces as an outsider is to step lightly, with humility and awareness, recognizing that access alone does not grant comprehension, mastery, or ethical authority. Responsible knowledge sharing requires more than the mere exchange of information. It demands respect for context, attention to consent, and engagement with the relational practices that sustain understanding. Knowledge is not a neutral commodity. It is power imbued with responsibility, a responsibility that intensifies when one crosses the boundaries of the community that nurtured it. To handle such knowledge carelessly is to risk not only misrepresentation, but also the subtle harm of severing it from the lifeblood of the relationships, rituals, and practices that give it meaning. In the 21st century, digital platforms have created new forms of community, enabling knowledge to circulate widely and rapidly. Online forums, professional networks, and social media cultivate collective understanding, yet they also illustrate the fragility of context. Algorithms prioritize visibility, not depth. Virality often eclipses nuance. Communities online can reproduce epistemic hierarchies, gatekeeping and shared norms, or they can democratize knowledge, connecting dispersed practitioners and preserving practices that might otherwise vanish. The principle remains: knowledge gains meaning within a relational framework, whether physical or virtual. Yet the digital realm also highlights the tension between access and belonging. Even with endless information, understanding emerges only through engagement, dialogue, and immersion within communities that sustain it. Knowledge is not a solitary achievement. It is a river whose currents are shaped by the communities through which it flows. Some knowledge cannot be grasped from the riverbank. It must be entered, lived, and experienced. Communities provide the channels, the context, and the interpretive depth that allow knowledge to reach its fullest potential. To recognize the role of community is to recognize the relational and ethical dimensions of knowing. It invites humility for outsiders, responsibility for insiders, and a vision of understanding as a shared endeavor. Knowledge, in the end, is never fully isolated. It is social, embodied, and deeply human. Perhaps the truest measure of understanding is not simply access to information, but the capacity to inhabit the network's practices and relationships that allow knowledge to live, breathe, and guide action.